Shabbat Shalom, friends. It's nice to see all of you. I hope you're doing well and enjoying the sunshine. If you're watching this while the sun is still shining. If not, you are enjoying a cool evening and a wonderful Shabbat. And we welcome you with song and joy and prayer. And Cantor, do we have an opening song?
How about a classic, Hine Matov Umanayim, how good it is to be here together in community, our Jewish family, as we sing for Shabbat. Hine Matov Umanayim, Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Hine Matov Umanayim, Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. הנה מה טוב שבט אחים גם יחד הנה מה טוב שבט אחים גם יחד הנה מה טוב ומנעים שבט אחים גם יחד הנה מה טוב ומנעים שבט אחים גם יחד.
I think more and more these days we're recognizing how interrelated everything is. The ecosystems on our planet, people wherever they may live, our own community, which is scattered across the nation and around the world. But we're all connected one to another. And so when we sing Shema, Shema reminds us of that oneness, the oneness of all humanity, our oneness with our Creator, oneness with God. God is one, and that's what we proclaim when we sing Shema.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Malechuto Leolam Vaed.
The Michamocha is a song we all know, a song where the melody matches the meaning, where we sing with freedom as we celebrate freedom, the words of the Michamocha.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar ba'kodesh, mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar ba'kodesh. Nora tehilot oseh feheleh, Nora tehilot Adonai imloch leolam void. Ay la 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 la. Ay la 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 la. Ay la 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 la. Ay la 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 la. Dora tehilot Oseh feheleh, Nora tehilot, Oseh feheleh, Adonai imloch leolam voed.
Every time we gather for services, we sing together words that are familiar, but we also take time for our own personal expression. And so we pause for a moment of private prayer and meditation. As always, feel free to put us on pause so that you can say everything, all the longings that are in your heart, in your mind on this Shabbat. We pause for a moment of private prayer and meditation.
Part of the challenge of praying is searching our hearts for the right words, words that will create a sense of connection and community with the world around us, and words that truly express how we feel in this moment. So our prayer for finding the right words, Yihiyu L'Ratzon, may the words that we pray be acceptable before our Creator. Yihiyu L'Ratzon, Imrei fi, V'hegyon libi lefanecha, Adonai tzuri, Adonai tzuri, Begoali, Begoali, Yihiyu L'Ratzon, Imrei fi, V'hegyon libi lefanecha, Adonai tzuri, Adonai tzuri, V'goali,
That beautiful song brings us now to a moment of healing. And before we sing our Misha Berach, we also say a Jewish prayer for healing of the environment. We've tried a few. Here's one that was composed by a contemporary rabbi. Ribono Shel Olam, Master of the Universe, in whose hand is the breath of all life and soul of every person. Grant us the gift of Shabbat, a day of rest from all of our labors. With all of our senses, may we perceive the glory of your works. Fill us with your goodness. Strengthen us to become your faithful partners, preserving the world for the sake of future generations. May it be your will, Adonai, our God and God of our ancestors, to renew your blessing for the world, our planet, in our day, as you have done from the beginning of time. And we also pray for the healing of body, mind, and spirit of Marty Aronson, Elliot Obain, Benjamin Chaim Ben Sarah Leah, Lori Conter, Michael Dalbora, Michael Ellsworth, Marshall Galfand, Don Goldstein, Stuart Goodman, Jim Graham, Robbie Maller Hartman, Dennis Hernrich, Donna Horton, Julian Horowitz, Alana Issakow, David Kaminsky, Trevor Keeney, Lisette Cohn-Gale, Rana Kramer, Gabby Krause, Howard Levin, Hannah Malia, Michael Mahler, Barry Merrim, Jana Melnikov, Mikhail Ben Spora, David Moody, Leah Moskoff, Noach Ben David, Mark Pullman, Rachel Yisrael Abat Chaim, Bennett Richardson, Marla Rodriguez, Nancy Roman, Roberta Rosenfeld, Marty Rudow, Sarah Batsheva, Jackie Schneider, Chazan Sarah, Rachel Bat Alexander Moshe Yocheved, Ahuva Shana Bat Batya Vanester, Jeff Slowick, Dave Stratton, Vanessa Bat Mashalea Yehoshua, Lionel Watson, and Mike Zidman. Together we sing the words of the Misha Berach.
Misha Berach Avotenu Mekor Abracha Leimotenu May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Nisheberach imotenu lekol habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
As you know, we're in the midst of the Omer, counting 49 days from Passover to Shavuot. This Shabbat begins the 34th day of the Omer. And there is a special day that comes in the midst of Omer, which is just finishing as we go into this Shabbat, Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day. For traditional folks, this is a day for things like getting a haircut, which I did deliberately for this Lag BaOmer. It's the time when little boys get their first haircut, usually on their third year of life. They're 3 years old when they cut their hair for the first time. And that's among the things that are done to celebrate Lag BaOmer, but also bonfires and picnics and things like that to celebrate this kind of time in the midst of the Omer. So let's say the blessing and thank God for this time. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sfirat ha'omer. Blessed are you, God, for giving us the mitzvah of counting the Omer. This is the 34th day of the Omer beginning tonight. The 34th step on the journey from freedom from slavery to revelation at Sinai. And I have to say that I had already planned and written comments to make on this day coming out of Lag BaOmer into Shabbat before hearing tragic news from the state of Israel, the terrible accident, what was described by some people there as a human avalanche, leaving the festivities that mark Lag BaOmer. Often people go and visit the tombs of the great rabbis, and one in particular, Shimon Bar Yochai. And that's what I had written. I had written about Shimon Bar Yochai, and I was actually writing about the experience of being there on Lag BaOmer, where really, it's like a big festival. More than 100,000 Israelis typically gather, Israelis and tourists, people who've come to visit, go to this tomb to remember Shimon Bar Yochai, because traditionally we understand that Lag BaOmer, this day that they were celebrating, is the yahrzeit of Shimon Bar Yochai, one of the great rabbis of Jewish tradition, going all the way back to the time of the Roman occupation. And in my comments that I wrote just on Wednesday, I said, well, I don't know what this is going to look like this year on this time of COVID. And in fact, it was a smaller group than is usually there because of people's fear of the pandemic, and because the Israeli authorities were suggesting that it was not a good idea to gather in such large numbers. But it was precisely at this event, which could have happened in any year because it's such a narrow place and so tight. But who knows why? It's under investigation. But this year, this tragic accident happened. So there's a very narrow entryway, and people seem to have piled up, and fallen on top of each other, and people suffocated and died. I mean, we're hearing numbers about 45 deaths and hundreds of injuries in this case. So um, perhaps people were in a bigger hurry to get through the small passage that leads away from the tomb. Perhaps fewer people made the ground more slippery this year than in other years. It's always it's a pretty steep hillside and difficult to navigate. So the investigation will tell us, we'll understand what happened, but that doesn't change it, of course. It is another tragedy in a year so full of death, so full of pain, anger, and feelings of impotence. And this tragedy, of course, is small by comparison, compared to what is going on in India this week, for example, where the plague goes on unchecked. As bad as it is there, scientists tell us that the wave of disease has not peaked. The numbers will continue to grow at least for the next few weeks in India. So what can we do in the face of disaster? There's not much that an individual can do to help the people of India unless that individual has access to oxygen tanks and respirators. We can urge our government to look outward and recognize that Indians are our brothers and sisters, that especially now that we seem to see a light ahead in America, we should give our light to those places that have been hit so much worse than we have. And here too, we have to remain vigilant. This is no time to be careless. We may see the light, but we are not at the end of the tunnel. We all have COVID fatigue. We want to get back to a semblance of normal, but we need to keep pushing toward true herd immunity in our nation and around the world. Shimon Bar Yochai lived nearly 2,000 years ago in the time of the Roman occupation. Like many rabbis of his time, he said what he thought, and as a result, Rome sentenced him to death. Bar Yochai went into hiding. Seeing no one but his son, the two of them studied Torah and Jewish tradition for 12 years. According to the mystics, it was during this time living in a cave that Bar Yochai wrote the text that we come to know as Zohar, the great Kabbalist Torah commentary. Shimon Bar Yochai teaches us many things. He's quoted often in Talmud. Whether or not he actually wrote the Zohar, scholars will tell us that he did not. His reputation is such that we celebrate his life and we mark his yahrzeit on the 33rd day of the Omer, Lag BaOmer. But that doesn't mean that Bar Yochai was perfect, far from it. In fact, the best remembered story of Bar Yochai is one that I've taught on many occasions about what happens after he and his son come out of that cave. They have outlasted the Roman emperor. And with the death of the emperor, the decree against Bar Yochai has been lifted. Instead of coming out rejoicing after 12 years of seclusion, 12 years of nothing but Torah study, Bar Yochai comes out of his cave and he sees people going about their daily business, and it disgusts him. He judges them. He judges them for engaging in worldly activities in business as if they have forsaken all Torah study. Intolerant in the extreme, the story tells us that fire shoots forth from his eyes and he destroys everything he looks at. God sends Bar Yochai back into the cave, kind of like a reprimanding parent saying, go to your room and don't come out until you can be civil. This has some parallels today. It appears that metaphorically, we are able to come out of our cave. More and more of us, as we get vaccinated, we can see friends and family. It won't be long now before we can start gathering for services like this one in person. We expect to create some sort of hybrid. We don't want to let go of the people who've been joining us long distance, those who are immunocompromised or timid about crowds, even small ones. But it is important that we learn the lesson of Shimon Bar Yochai. He spent all those years separated from others, far longer than we have. And when he tries to re-enter the world, he's short-tempered and judgmental. And he was one of the greatest rabbis in history. So what hope is there for us to do better than he did? He studied Torah all that time, and yet he forgets to apply its teachings when he comes out into public. He forgets that we're taught to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. He forgets what his contemporary Rabbi Hillel taught: do not do to others what is hateful to you. And so as we emerge from our places of refuge, we need to take those lessons from Torah very seriously, to love our neighbors, to extend our hands to others, to be patient with the rules and with each other, to emerge from this time more loving and less judgmental, to rebuild a broken world and make it a place of which we can be proud. As this Lag BaOmer comes to an end and Shabbat begins, this moment of coming out of seclusion takes on extra meaning. Lag in Hebrew is the number 33. The letters themselves, Lamed is 30 and Gimel is 3. They could go in either order. So if you reverse them, you get the word Gil, which is the Hebrew root for the word joy. Lag BaOmer is supposed to mark a return to joy. The Omer is associated with the grain harvest in ancient Israel. And our ancestors were worried during this time. Would the crops mature? Would the ears of grain and the fruits and vegetables be bountiful? They marked the Omer as a kind of a quasi-mourning, which is why they didn't cut their hair during that time, why they said prayers of penitence. But the 33rd day, that yahrzeit of Shimon Bar Yochai, is the day that's supposed to turn our heart from the seeds and the worry to the growing fruit and growing joy, to Gil, to joy in our lives. That adds to the sadness of the news from Israel and India. It is Lag BaOmer for us, but not yet for them. And when we think of loving our neighbors, that includes doing all we can to bring everyone into this moment of liberation that is becoming palpable for us here in the northern suburbs, perhaps here in our nation. In some ways, our world has been very small, like people living in a cave. Now we again turn our hearts to the world and do what we can to transform sorrow to joy, committed anew to creating a world of love, healing, and acceptance. If we can't yet embrace each other literally, may we still add warmth and caring and love to the world around us. Ken Yehi Ratzon. May this be God's will. Amen.
Yasher Koach. It's all of our jobs to add healing to our world and joy, Gila Verina, to our world. And one of the ways that we honor in Judaism is by remembering the joy that our loved ones brought to us. And in particular, we think of those in our community who have died at this season's past and recently. And in particular, we are in the period of Shiloshim of 30 days mourning for Jeffrey Kleinberg, for Harriet Morrison, for Lawrence Butch Zinman, for Richard Fenton, for Toddy Richmond, for Sandra Schulman, and for Harriet Dralick Sachs. And we observe the Yortzites, the anniversary of their deaths this Shabbat, of Reuben Applebaum, Mary Behrman, Nathan Biederman, Harry Beckenstein, Fred Cohn, Hyman Gerstein, Shirley Goodman, Sinai Gorelick, Alfred Grunhut, Marilyn Heyman, Edith Pinsoff Handler, Robert Cass, Nathan Lefko, Valis Lipner, Zoltan Lipner, Hortense Livingston, David Lyon, Charles Metz, Saul Michaels, Ron Miller, Adam Charles Nelson, Max Pletman, Robert Pritzker, Ken Redman, Alvin Saper, Paul Stickler, Bessie Swee, Arthur J. Tronstein, Reba Turek, Louis Van Haney, Alice Wayland, Robert Weil, Ruth Wise, and Anna Weiner. Together we say the words of the mourner's Kaddish, the Kadisha tone. Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah Be'alma divra chirute ve'amlich malchute b'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael ba'agala uv'izman kari v'yimru amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah mevorach le'olam olamei almaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh V'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal Shemei dekudesha b'richu La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushvechata v'nechemata, damiran b'yalma v'yimru, amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru, amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru, amen. May God, the source of peace, send peace to all of us who mourn, and comfort to all who are bereaved, and let us all say, amen. Do we have a closing song, Cantor?
We sure do. And as Rabbi Ike had taught us, we do mark and celebrate Lag BaOmer. And there's a little bit of sadness, a little melancholy mixed in this year. And, as I think about Lag BaOmer, especially in the land of Israel, this folk song comes to mind. It's called Finjan, which is the name of a special coffee pot that is used in the Middle East around campfire. And so we'll offer this as a closing song for Lag BaOmer this year, and you'll find a sort of beautiful melancholy reflected in this melody as well. So sing this for our friends in Israel and around the world. Haruach noshevet krira, nosifa kisam lamdura. וכך בזרועות ארגמן, באש יעלה כקורבן. האש מהבהבת שירה, מלבלבת סובב לו סובב הפינג'ן. איי 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 סובב, לא סובב הפינג'ן. Softly the evening wind blows, golden our campfire glows. Although the evening soon dawn, the memories will live on and on. The embers go sending our song, never ending, as round and around goes Finjan. As around and around goes Finjan. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. That was great, Jay.